Here we go. Okay. Welcome. We've been busy this year on Lawless Legends. To answer your first question, we're not releasing anything at this Kansasfest, so sorry. We are, however, really, we're feeling very close. It's going to be this year. It's going to be before the next Kansasfest, for sure, and I think it's going to be before Christmas. Okay, so I need my notes. I'm going to kind of talk about things we've been doing by person, and I'm going to start with myself since I'm up here. We have been working on a lot of the things you need in a game nowadays. Maybe you needed them in the games of the past, but you really need them nowadays. Modern players expect. So this is the all the flavor text when you start the game. We kind of had this before, although it's been improved. But now you can actually create a character. I don't know how to spell Fuglitsky. KY? Is that good enough? All right. You can pick any letter you want for gender. I guess we'll be U. I don't know what U stands for. Okay. I think we had stats screen last year, so I'm not going to show you much of that. But we've done a whole bunch of work in here. You can level up now. It tells you the pack has been expanded. You can have 30 items. You can manipulate your inventory, like you can, if you've got 20 bullets, you can split it into 2 sets, and I got 15 and 5. And that becomes useful when you want to give some of your bullets to an NPC who's in your party so that they've got some bullets too. And then once you're in town, there's a bunch of new stuff at the bottom of the screen. There's a lantern, there's a compass, tells you which direction you're facing, which the 3D mode really, really needed. It was super easy to get lost. And there's a clock. You can now, you can press spacebar to space out and change the time. So there's an actual time of day now. And scripts can react to the time of day. They can do different stuff. Stores will be closed at night. There's now evening, which wasn't before, that kind of dithers the sky and the ground. And then when it gets to be full night, there's also distance-based, just blanking out of the background, so you just can't see as far. So that's a little more realistic rendering. We're pretty happy about that. All right, day and night cycles. Oh yeah, the lamp flickers at night. You can now pull up a feature. This is the single most requested feature of anybody at previous sessions. They wanted an auto map. This will now keep track of everything you have seen at night. If you've not seen as far, it won't go as far, obviously. It has special icons like the E's indicate the exit from town. S might be a saloon, I can't remember. This was really fun code to create. Probably more useful out on the world map. Let's see, where was the exit? All right, looks like if I go. Let's turn around, go out of town. There's an exit. Leave. So now we're out in the wilderness, and it's keeping track of the parts of the wilderness we visited, not visited. You can scroll this around. We haven't visited very much, but you can scroll it around the entire world map, and that's when you learn, wow, the world map is really big. So, auto map is there. It's totally working. This required a lot of juggling of memory, just like Nox Archaist. We were constantly like, I want a K-byte to do this thing. What can I do? What can I wrangle into some crazy place in aux memory to get that? But currently, I'm pretty comfortable. We have enough space to expand things that we need to expand. So I think 95% of the engine is just done. For testing purposes, there's now a version number down here, so our testers can tell us in version 8719K99, I had this issue happen. They can also, you can save your game, which we had last year, and they can send me their save game. I can try to reproduce that problem. It's a lot easier. It also tells you how much of the, there's a 12K dynamic heap where strings and all your inventory and stuff is kept, and that's garbage collected. And this tells you how much of that is currently in use. So not very much, but later in the game when you've got 3 characters in your party and they've all got 30 items, that starts to get up there. Again, these will be hidden in the final version, but really nice for testing. Let's see, we talked about stacking items, we talked about trading between characters. You can load your game at any point. Just hit Control L, it'll load it. So you can always go back without rebooting. And many bug fixes. I would say the engine is really stable right now, with one exception that we'll talk about later. So that's what I personally have been working on with the other team members. Seth Sternberger, who is also 8-bit or half of 8-bit Weapon, is doing all the scenario work, and he's doing a ton of stuff in there. I'm not as connected to that because he's just doing it, and he's working with a coterie of beta testers. The scenario has been played start to finish 3 full times now, so that's getting really close. Plenty of bugs come up when that happens, and I want to thank our testers for reporting the bugs. It really helps us. Yes, sometimes it takes 2 months to get back to you because we have lives, but knowing about them is more than half the battle. Some interesting things Seth has been doing to the scenario. In modern games, a lot of gamers expect to be able to be evil. You can now be evil in Lawless Legends. You can kill anybody. You can kill the saloon keeper. You can kill the merchant in town. They won't sell you stuff if they're dead. There are consequences to killing everybody, but you can do it. And I think that's really cool. Also, you can, there are more than 3, you got room for 3 non-player, 3 characters in your party, including yourself. There are more than 3 NPCs in the game, so you can now swap them out. You can put them in a hotel in town and say, yeah, just hang out here. I'm taking Prospect Pete with me up to the mine. So that's there. The game now supports potentially thousands of flags instead of dozens, so the scenario has lots of triggers. It's a much more complex game. It can keep track of a lot more stuff, and that was an easy fix. I changed a variable that was 5 bytes into 1 bit, and that made a big difference. Okay, Brendan, unfortunately I didn't get my act together. I cannot demonstrate the next part, but Brendan has been working on UI for Windows, Mac, etc. He happens to be the creator of the Jace emulator, which runs under Java. He's made a nice front end for us. He's put in some special features for Lawless Legends that, for instance, will suppress the color burst on particular areas of the screen, just so it's a little nicer looking. But you still get the retro feel of the overall graphics without actually having the text be irritatingly blue and orange. He's added buttons for adjusting the speed, and Lawless Legends checks some special memory locations so that, if you've sped up the emulation, the parts of this that you want to run faster, and the parts that shouldn't, don't. And he's been doing some stuff on Outlaw, like you can now take whole sections of the map and shift them, one thing to the right so that you can fit in some trees on the edge or whatever you need to do. So some nice improvements there. And Dave Schmenk has obviously been working hard on Plasma. This is fairly up to date on Plasma. I think we're up to 1.1, but he's up to 2.0. Anyway, but I've been following along. I talked him into adding Lambda functions to Plasma, and A, because it's cool, and B, because it's really useful. Like, I have a function that iterates through the party's inventory. And sometimes I want to iterate through the party's inventory to see if they've got a certain piece of armor or, various other criteria. So I can make one iteration function and one armor function, and with Lambda I can just do this one using that one, and it saves code, it's more elegant, it makes me feel like I'm programming in Ruby, I'm happy. Dave has also done, why don't I have any sound? You will hear there are bugs in the sound. But it's getting there. So that's Mockingboard music. So Dave's got a sequencer that just takes a MIDI file in and spits a data file out that he's got. I'm kind of amazed that sequencer is actually written in Plasma because he's Dave. He does everything in Plasma. That said, there's some timing issues, and I fear that we may have to rip the whole thing out and replace it with an interrupt-driven assembly language version. And so I'm not making any promises about Mockingboard support in at least the first version that we release. So that's a pretty big task right there, and I would rather not delay the whole thing just so that we can have that. That said, if there are any Mockingboard people in this room, and I know there are, we could definitely use your assistance there. So that'd be awesome. Couple credits for things that haven't changed this year, but Andrew Hogan did the lovely font engine, so we have proportional text, which we love because we can fit more text on the screen. And Cucumba did Pro RWTS, which is awesome and saved us 10K at least of memory, plus a bunch of disk space. Has also contributed some little code improvements, which I have not yet pulled because it takes a while to test them. Speaking of pulling, we, as before, we have all the code on GitHub. If you, for some reason, are interested, you can watch all the commits as they roll in. 1,537 of them so far. And you can contribute code. We don't have a good way for you to become a casual contributor to the code base. But if you want to become a serious contributor to the code base, then let me know and we'll get you going. But there isn't really a version of this that you can just pull down, build, and run in 15 minutes. For one thing, the scenario is private, the code is public, as before. So, with all of that said, what's left before we release? I'm currently working on a quest log. You'll be able to hit a key. It'll say, you're currently engaged in finding the little girl's teddy bear. And then, if you're a modern gamer, you expect to be able to hit a key that says, okay, show me where this goddamn teddy bear is. I've been looking all over the place. And you can now, very shortly, hit that key. It'll open up the auto map. It'll tell you where to go. So if you want that, it's there. And I felt ambivalent about that feature. I was like, modern gamers suck. It's not right. And then I was playing a role-playing game on my PS4, and I use that all the time. Like, pot calling the kettle black. So we're putting it in there. We need a bunch of help screens written. We need an options menu. Some people like the 3D view where you can turn angles other than 90 degrees and go forward in little increments. And other people, it just bugs the hell out of them, and they want to turn a full 90 degrees. They want to go a full block forward with one keystroke. So you'll be able to do that soon. We're talking about feelies and maybe not a Kickstarter, but just a box with feelies that you can order. That's not my department, so I don't know if that's going to happen. But it would be awesome. And lots of testing. We have several of our beta testers are here. If you would like to join that effort, could probably take one or two more. So lots of testing and bug fixes. And that is all my content. I have plenty of time, to take questions.
I'm really curious about the auto map. I know you showed it briefly before. I'm wondering, does that just kind of keep track of a small area around where the player is, or does that, gradually learn as the player discovers more areas, so that there's always, the ability for the player to look over the entire world. Here's what you've seen. Here's what you've not seen.
So the question is, does the auto map keep track of just kind of the area you're in, or does it accumulate everything you've ever seen? The answer is the latter. It keeps track of everything you've ever seen, periodically flushes those bits to disk, and then, so you can look at every place you've ever been and see what was there. I think the only weird caveat there is that data saves more often than you explicitly hit the save key. So your auto map might save more stuff than your saved game actually accessed, just because that was really the only option. We have, this data builds up pretty quick. It has to get flushed or we run out of RAM.
Follow-up question, if I may. Do you have any kind of tricks and techniques to make the disk space requirements for that saved auto map data, which could theoretically be as big as the entire world? Do you have a way to somehow make that take up less space than the actual world map itself that is what's rendered to the player walking around the screen?
So the question is, do we have tricks to make that auto map data take less space on the disk? Answer is yes, and I'm happy to share them with you.
Thank you.
I guess the biggest trick is to devote 1 bit per square on the map. That's the biggest one.
Gotcha.
What's the minimum system? Does it work beyond 2+, or does it require 2E or higher?
This game requires 128K 2E or higher. I would love to get it running on the 2+, but that is going to be a very large post-release task, and the only person who's going to help is me. So that'll be later. It should run, this is all regular res graphics, but the memory management is going to be radically different on a 2+.
Two parts. Are you intending to give or sell or both, and also what software license have you chosen?
So the question is, are we going to give or sell or both, and what's the software license? Lawless Legends is sell. We're going to sell this game. We're not going to make a lot of money on that, but the goal has always been let's make a game that we could sell. So we're going to sell it. So that's why the scenario data is private. That said, the engine, 100% of the code you see, except for the scripts that are scenario specific, is open source with a Apache 2 license. There is a much smaller, cheesy demo game called, I don't know if it's cheesy, that's not fair.
I didn't think it was cheesy at all.
Ancient Legends is smaller, less ambitious. It does not currently run on this engine because we've added so much stuff, but we will come back and update the Ancient Legends scenario to run on the current version of this engine. And Ancient Legends is, I don't know if it has a license. Anyway, it's free. So you'll be able to see how these things are done. You'll be able to make your own. And the Outlaw editor is free as well. Other questions? Good. Okay. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah.